Okay, so picture this scenario for a second. You have just a splitting headache, like a really bad one.
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst.
Right. And you finally manage to dig around and find a bottle of pain relievers. You pop a pill, you swallow it down with a glass of water, and like almost immediately you feel this sense of relief washing over you.
You start to feel better right away.
Exactly. But here is the catch. That pill hasn't even reached your stomach yet. I mean, it hasn't had time to dissolve, let alone enter your bloodstream and, actually interact with your nervous system. And yet you feel better.
It's such a universal experience, honestly, and it is usually the moment where we catch ourselves and say, well, I guess it was just in my head.
Yes, we dismiss it as just in our heads. But today, we are doing a deep dive into a huge stack of research, specifically leaning on some, honestly, incredible insights from a book called The Medicine of Meaning, to completely rewire how you think about that phrase.
And how you view the mind-body connection, really.
It is to explore the hard, measurable science of how the stories we believe literally alter our physical bodies.
Which is such a necessary paradigm shift for all of us, I think. Because the placebo effect is almost always treated as a nuisance in medicine, right?
Like a glitch.
Yeah, exactly. It's seen as a statistical error, or worse, as this polite way to dismiss a patient's symptom, like, oh, it's just a placebo. But the research we were looking at today flips that completely upside down.
It totally does.
The placebo effect isn't a dismissal at all. It is a profound, ground-shaking discovery about the human body's capacity to heal or harm itself based purely on the meaning it receives.
And I want to jump right into this because I was looking at your notes on the electric shock trial and the research, and the numbers are just staggering. It perfectly illustrates how meaning fundamentally changes a physical experience, even when the underlying chemistry of a pill is like a complete zero.
It really is wild. So researchers take two different groups of people and give them the exact same inert sugar pill. Same shape, same filler, a total absence of anything chemically capable of touching a nerve ending.
But they changed the story.
Right, the framing is everything here. They tell the first group, this is a brand new, highly effective painkiller, and it costs $2.50 per pill.
Okay.
Then they hand the exact same sugar pill to the second group and tell them, this is a discounted pill. It's been marked down to 10 cents. And then they give both groups a painful electric shock.
Which sounds awful.
Yeah.
But the physiological response is completely divergent.
It completely diverges, yeah. 85% of the people holding the expensive $2.50 pill reported real, measurable relief from the pain of that shock. But in the group holding the discounted 10-cent pill, only 61% reported relief.
It's exactly like buying a luxury brand bag versus buying a knockoff.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. Because the canvas and the stitching, they might be physically identical. The physical materials are exactly the same. But the story of the luxury brand, that hefty price tag, literally changes your posture and how you feel when you wear it.
Yeah, you carry yourself differently.
Exactly. Except in this medical context, the story is actually changing how much physical pain a person registers from an electrical current.
Because the molecule was identical in both groups. The story wrapped around the molecule was not. And this leads to a massive realization in the field. It was the story, not the molecule, that reached the body.
The story did the work.
Right. The ritual of taking the pill, the context of care, the perceived value, that entire narrative is what actually triggered the internal pharmacy.
But see, if you hear that, the natural assumption is, okay, the brain is powerful, but it requires you to be tricked. Like you have to believe a lie for the magic to work.
Which is what everyone assumed for decades.
Yeah. But there's this trial involving irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, that totally shatters that assumption. And this just blew my mind.
This is genuinely one of the most important studies in modern medical literature. They took patients suffering from irritable bowel syndrome and handed them a bottle of sugar pills. But they didn't lie to them.
They just told them the truth.
They told them the absolute truth. They were told plainly, with absolutely no trick involved, exactly what was in the bottle. The researchers essentially said, these are inert pills. There is no active drug in here whatsoever. However, prior research shows that taking these pills can trigger real relief through the body's own mind-body healing processes.
Wait, so deception isn't even required. I just want to make sure I have this right for anyone listening. The healing doesn't require you to be tricked into believing a lie.
No deception whatsoever. They knew precisely what they were swallowing, and yet those patients improved roughly twice as much as patients who were given nothing at all to interpret.
Twice as much.
Yes, the effect was so large it rivaled the actual active pharmaceutical drugs it was tested against.
But how does that even make sense from an evolutionary standpoint? I mean, why would our bodies be built to wait for a known fake pill to start healing? That seems, I don't know, counterintuitive.
It does, until you realize that the brain is at its core an ultimate energy conservation machine. Think of it like a miserly accountant.
Okay, miserly accountant.
Yeah, the brain has all these incredible resources, pain-relieving chemicals, anti-inflammatories, all of it, but it doesn't want to waste them. If you are sick or injured, the brain often hoards its resources because it doesn't know how long the crisis will last.
That makes sense. It's holding on to its reserves.
Exactly. But when you introduce a meaning, a doctor's care, a pill, a ritual, it sends a signal to the brain that says help has arrived, the cavalry is here. It is safe to spend your reserves.
Ah. So the open-label placebo still works because the ritual of taking it provides that signal of safety. So the healing was never contingent on the pill being a lie.
Not at all.
It was contingent on the meaning being received by the body.
Precisely. The story tells the accountant to open the vault.
Man, that is fascinating. But wait, if our brains are this easily influenced by a positive story, doesn't that make us incredibly vulnerable?
It does, very much so.
I mean, think about you, the listener, right now. Think about the last time you Googled your symptoms. You have like a slight cough, you read some terrifying article online, and suddenly your chest feels incredibly tight and you're sweating. If a positive story can heal without deception, a negative story can absolutely manufacture harm, right?
It absolutely can, and it does. If you turn this exact same physiological law in the other direction, it gets incredibly ugly. In the medical field, this is known as the nocebo effect.
The nocebo effect.
Right. It's when a negative expectation literally manufactures harm in the body.
And our research highlights a massive statin trial that illustrates this perfectly. So for anyone who doesn't know, statins are drugs used to lower cholesterol, and they are notorious for causing pretty severe muscle pain.
Yeah, it's one of the most common complaints.
Right. So researchers tracked this muscle pain across two different phases. First, there was a completely blinded phase. Nobody, not the doctors, not the patients, nobody knew who held the real statin drug and who held the placebo sugar pill.
And during that blind phase, the rate of muscle symptoms was nearly identical between the statin group and the placebo group. It was hovering around 2% either way.
Okay, wow.
Which proves that fundamentally the chemical itself wasn't the primary driver of the pain.
But then comes the unblinded phase, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly the curtain is pulled back and everyone is told exactly what they're taking. And the moment people learned they were on the real statin, reports of muscle pain spiked by over 40%. In that exact same population.
On that exact same pill. And a later trial actually confirmed this even more dramatically. They had patients unknowingly rotate between the real drug, a placebo, and taking nothing at all.
Okay.
They found that roughly 90% of the symptom burden these patients had spent years blaming on the statin. All that pain and discomfort showed up just as reliably when they were taking the sugar pill.
Okay, I have to stop and ask the question that I know you, listening to this, are probably screaming at your device right now. Are these people just lying? Or, are they just imagining the pain because they read a warning label and got paranoid?
This raises such an important question, and we have to draw a crucial distinction here. The pain was not imagined.
It wasn't.
No. The physical sensation those patients were feeling was completely real. However, the tissue damage was imagined.
Okay, let's slow down on that. What is the difference between real pain and tissue damage?
Think of it like a fire alarm in a building. The alarm bell ringing, that's the pain. The fire is the tissue damage.
I see.
In this case, the brain pulled the fire alarm because it was told to expect a fire based on the warning label of the statin. The alarm is blaring. The person is experiencing very real, very agonizing muscle pain. But if you look at the muscle, well, there is no actual fire.
Wow.
There is no muscle tissue being damaged by the chemical. The body manufactured real pain based entirely on a warning.
So one identical stimulus, given two different meanings, produces two different bodies.
Exactly.
If the idea of this will hurt you or this will heal you was just a fixed, unconditional biological fact, a price tag wouldn't move the needle. A blind trial would move the needle, but they do. The meaning is built fresh in a meeting between a stimulus and the mind that receives it.
It's constructed in real time, but constructed is not the same as fake.
Right. And that drives us deeper into the core of this whole deep dive. Because it's one thing to talk about pain, which is, somewhat subjective. How exactly does a meaning or a story transform into a measurable physical reality?
You want to know the mechanics of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like how do we know this isn't just subjective reporting where people just say they feel better or worse to please a doctor?
Because we can measure the hard biology of it. We can track the actual chemicals. Let's look at the dental surgery study.
Exactly.
So patients undergo a very painful dental surgery. They are given a placebo painkiller, and they report that their pain goes down. Now, if it's just in their head, meaning they're just making it up, that's where the story ends. But the researchers then quietly infuse those same patients with a drug called naloxone.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, naloxone, which a lot of people probably know by the brand name Narcan, is a drug that specifically blocks the body's opioid receptors. It's what paramedics use to reverse opioid overdoses, right? It
Yeah.
basically puts a lock on the doors so opioids can't get in.
Precisely. It completely shuts down the receptors that opioid chemicals attach to. And the moment that naloxone is infused into these dental patients, the placebo's pain relief instantly vanishes. The patients are in absolute agony again.
Oh, wow. Which means the placebo wasn't just a comforting thought.
Right. It means the placebo had been triggering endogenous opioids.
For those who aren't neuroscientists, endogenous opioids are essentially the body's own homemade version of morphine.
Our bodies make morphine. Your brain can manufacture its own painkillers, yes. The expectation of relief from the placebo wasn't just psychological comfort. It was a literal physical command to the brain's pharmacy to start pumping out homemade morphine. And the naloxone blocked it, proving it was physically there.
That is undeniable physical proof. And what's crazy is they didn't just measure this with painkillers. They measured it in Parkinson's patients, too. I found this part of the research completely wild.
Yes, and this one is even more visceral to visualize, I think. Parkinson's disease involves a severe lack of dopamine in the brain, which causes tremors and motor control issues. Researchers gave these patients a saline injection, literally just salt water, but the patients believed it was their real, highly potent medication.
And what happened?
That belief alone triggered a massive dopamine surge in the brain on the scale of a heavy amphetamine dose.
But they didn't just measure the chemical surge in the fluid, right? They measured the actual individual neurons.
They did. These patients already had electrodes implanted deep in their brains for surgery. Through those electrodes, researchers literally measured the slowing of individual neurons firing deep in the subthalamic nucleus, which is basically the brain's main motor control switchboard.
That is unbelievable.
They could hear the rapid, chaotic firing of Parkinson's calm down to a steady rhythm, a change in a single cell's rhythm tracked in real time, not a metaphor, a physical rewiring prompted by a story.
Okay, so expectation triggers homemade morphine, it surges dopamine, it calms the brain's motor switchboard. But the research goes even further to say this doesn't even require conscious belief. Which brings us to the unconscious association study.
Oh, this one is fascinating. What's amazing here is that the pattern runs much deeper than your conscious conviction. It runs as deep as basic Pavlovian association.
Like the dogs with the bells.
Exactly. If you take a patient and pair a very distinct flavor, say, a strange sweet strawberry syrup with a powerful immunosuppressant drug, and you do that enough times, the body learns the connection.
It pairs the flavor with the chemical drop in immune response.
Exactly. Eventually, you can take the actual drug away entirely. You give the patient just that distinct strawberry flavor, and the flavor alone will suppress their immune system.
It's exactly like setting up a keyboard macro on your computer. You program it so that when you press Control F, a whole sequence of complex actions happens automatically behind the scenes.
Yes, that's exactly it.
The flavor is just a shortcut key. You press it, and the body automatically runs the entire chemical software program, drug or no drug.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. The body doesn't have the capacity for belief in a conscious intellectual sense when it comes to a flavor. It's not, thinking about the syrup. But the association runs the macro anyway.
Okay, and I have to ask this, because if the brain can do this, if it can manufacture morphine, surge dopamine, and literally suppress the immune system just based on a story or a macro, why can't I just think my way out of any disease?
The million-dollar question.
Why can't I just believe a broken leg back together or think away a tumor?
And that is exactly where the biology draws a very firm, very important line. This is where we get into the concept of a bounded jurisdiction.
A bounded jurisdiction. Okay, explain that for us.
Think about all the systems we've talked about so far. Pain signaling, nausea, fatigue, mood. Certain inflammatory pathways, motor control pathways, what do they all have in common?
They're all in the brain.
They are all systems that the nervous system already has real pre-existing authority over.
I see.
Placebos work by turning dials the body already possesses. The brain controls how much pain you feel so it can turn that dial down, but placebos do not touch structural facts.
So going back to the open-label placebo we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
it relieved the symptoms of IBS, like the cramping, the pain.
Yeah.
But it didn't actually cure any underlying structural issues in the gut.
Exactly. And the saline injection in the Parkinson's patients, it changed how the surviving dopamine neurons were firing for a while, providing incredible real relief from the tremors. But it didn't regrow a single dying dopamine neuron. Expectation cannot install a dial where none exists.
So belief isn't a magic wand that alters reality. It's more like a volume knob for our symptoms.
I couldn't have said it better. It is a volume knob. Belief is a real measurable force. It moves the felt experience and the physiology underneath it reliably enough to be taken seriously by doctors. But it stops absolutely at the edge of that jurisdiction.
Which is so important to understand because there is this whole culture of toxic positivity out there.
Oh, yes. The just believe harder mentality. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, is why pushing that mentality is actually quite dangerous.
Because it blames the patient.
Exactly, because belief has strict biological boundaries. Telling a severely sick person to just believe harder or stay positive becomes incredibly cruel when it's offered as a cure for something belief was never biologically wired to reach. You cannot think away a tumor, just as you cannot think away a broken bone.
Okay, so we've established that expectation has strict physiological limits. It can't promise an outcome, it can't regrow neurons, it can't heal a fracture. So, listener, you might be asking the logical next question. Why should I bother consciously holding on to any belief at all?
It's a fair point.
Right. If the jurisdiction is bounded, why not just be a complete skeptic about everything and, protect myself from disappointment?
It's a very fair question. But let's look back at every single trial we discussed today. In every trial, there was a control group handed nothing to interpret, no pill, no story, no frame. And in every single trial, that group improved the least.
So expecting nothing didn't actually protect them.
No, it didn't protect them from disappointment. It just left the body's own healing channels completely shut. If you expect nothing, the brain's internal accountant has no reason to open the vault. It has no reason to reach for those internal dials.
There's a great analogy for this in our notes. A belief doesn't need to be the final, ultimate, eternal truth about reality to be worth holding, any more than a key needs to be the one true key in the universe to be worth turning.
I love that.
It just needs to fit the lock right in front of it. We should reach for a belief the way we reach for a tool, not because it's a permanent verdict on how the universe works, but for what it opens in our biology in this specific moment.
Which highlights the immense danger of what we can call calcified beliefs.
Okay, what does a calcified belief look like in real life?
It is the exact same mechanism as the nocebo effect we talked about with the statins and the muscle pain. The lever in the brain that releases these chemicals doesn't check whether the story pulling it is kind or cruel. It doesn't check if the story is brief or permanent, or even if it's completely true.
Okay.
The only thing that lever checks is whether the story was received as certain.
So if a doctor delivers a diagnosis to you, like a final, immovable verdict,
The body receives it as certain. It runs the macro. Or think about a cruel sentence someone said to you years ago, a limitation a teacher or a parent or a boss placed on you.
oh, wow.
If you have carried that sentence since then as though it were the fundamental, immovable truth about who you are, rather than just one finite interpretation offered by one flawed human being on one particular day.
Your body treats that sentence exactly like it treated the naloxone or the statin warning label. It makes it real.
It absolutely does.
Think about that for a second, you listening to this. Think about the medical labels or the personal verdicts or the limitations you've accepted about yourself over the years. Are you carrying them as permanent facts or just as one finite interpretation?
The body is incredibly faithful and it is entirely literal. It takes your trust at its word. If you trust a negative verdict as absolute certainty, the body dutifully moves that limitation through your physical reality, tightening your chest, raising your cortisol, lowering your baseline.
This has been an absolutely massive shift in how to view the mind. So let's bring it all together. What is the ultimate takeaway here for the listener?
The takeaway is that none of this makes expectation powerless, but none of it makes expectation sovereign either. It means the pill was never the medicine, and the word was never the wound.
What did the work every time? Was a body willing to believe one of them?
Exactly. Your body's wiring, its bounded jurisdiction, its capacity to respond is fixed hardware. You can't change the hardware. But what software program walks through that door next is entirely up for grabs.
Which brings us back to that painkiller we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive. The one that works before it even hits your stomach. It wasn't just in your head. It was your brain receiving a story of relief, opening the vault, and dutifully manufacturing the physical reality to match it.
And this leaves us with a critical and honestly provocative question to consider. If our physical bodies are shaped this intensely by the stories we accept as certain, think about the generational narratives we pass down.
Oh, that's interesting.
When we casually tell our kids, our family just has bad backs, or we just aren't athletic, or we're naturally anxious people, or we just making conversation. Or are we literally programming their biology to fail before they even start?
That is well.
If your nervous system is dutifully manufacturing physical realities out of the stories you have blindly accepted, what dormant physical locks might you open in your own body tomorrow simply by choosing a different, equally plausible story?
That is such a powerful thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and for exploring the incredible measurable power of the meaning we choose. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you tell yourself.